Welcome to the Move Local podcast. Our mission is to connect the movers and shakers of the Dundas and Hamilton area who pride themselves on growing a healthier and more connected community. We will do this through having conversations around health, education, entrepreneurship, and much more. We want to be part of helping you move confident, move free, and move local. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Move Local podcast, brought to you by The Movement. My name is Dalton, and alongside me today, I have my newest guest, Jordan McCarter. We're going to talk all about regenerative agriculture and what he's doing with his new company, June. I'm super excited to learn more about this topic. It's definitely something that I don't know a lot about, and so part of what I love about doing this podcast is connecting with a lot of the other amazing small business that we have going on here to learn something new. So, Jordan, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. This is exciting.
How's the day been so far?
Day's been great. Just left an awesome meeting with a potential investor, and happy to come here to the physio clinic and do this with you, and then go through some physio because I need it.
Yeah. I'll learn a little bit about all the stuff you're doing with June, and then I'll take you through some of the stuff that we do here at the Movement. It'll be fun.
Cool. That's awesome.
I'd love to kick it off though with a little bit about your backstory. We had the opportunity to connect prior to doing this podcast, and I learned a little bit about you. But I'd love to maybe have the audience get to connect with you a little bit more. I know the agricultural thing isn't what you've always done your whole life, yeah. So I'd love to hear a little bit about what life was like growing up for you, and kind of what led you to what you're doing now with June.
Yeah, for sure. Life growing up was great. Very fortunate childhood. I had two working class parents, and over time that kind of developed into business ownership, and I grew up just watching my folks work really hard and provide for my sister and I. And then as I got a little bit older, I started going to the office with my dad and seeing what it's like to be a business owner and an entrepreneur, and I fell in love with that. And I thought that was the coolest thing to have an office downtown, and at the time it was on Houston Street, and I'd go there as a kid and just run around the office. I thought it was so cool. And then outside of that and just being a kid, I played basketball, Blessed Sacrament Yellow Jackets, so that was a big part of my life, and unfortunately blew out my knees, and I think that's part of why I'm here in the physio clinic today to start fixing those. And then I was just a regular kid, just having fun and playing basketball, going to school, and then as I kind of got older, I wanted to get into business, and joined a family business at the time, and worked there along with my family for a better part of a decade until the eventual sale of that business. And that was an insurance business, so very different than agriculture. Not a farmer by any means, but now that I own farmland, it's pretty cool to go from something like insurance into a couple other different ventures along the way, and now having this regenerative farmland fund. It's been an incredible kind of career and life so far, and I'm one of those guys that looks forward to Mondays. I know what the week ahead of me has in store, and I'm excited about that every week.
That's super cool.
So
I'd love to hear a little bit about what was it about when you went as a young kid to your work with your dad, and what about the entrepreneurship role drew you to it? What were you excited about?
Yeah, good question. I'd say for me it was really starting my own kind of little hustle as a kid, and it started with seeing what he does for a living, and this thing called business, and when you're a kid you don't really understand that. But I'll say when I started my first lemonade stand at the end of the driveway, that was kind of the pivotal moment, and I remember it clear as day. It's one of my earliest memories as a kid was when I got my first customer at that lemonade stand, and the excitement of hearing this car coming down the street to the disappointment of watching him drive right by, and then having him turn around at the end of the street and come back. So it's that up and down of an entrepreneur.
I felt that all in one moment.
All in one moment. I felt that as a very young age, right? Yeah. And then when this guy jumped out of his car and assessed my lemonade stand and told me how I'm doing it wrong, and you gotta, do it like this because people want fresh lemonade, and then he handed me $20. And when you're a kid, that's a million.
You're loaded.
Right? So, and he didn't even take a lemonade. So he got back in his car and left.
That's cool.
And, to this day, I'm fortunate to get to call that guy a mentor. And I still know him. I still talk to him regularly.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And it's, he's like an uncle to me, that guy. So very fortunate.
Yeah.
And I would say it was that. And then it was, again, just watching my family kind of navigate this business world as, business owners, entrepreneurs in Hamilton. And I just fell in love with it. I've got it in my blood, and I've been doing it since I was a kid.
Yeah, that's a great story. And like, it's funny because I think I was telling you this before when we chatted, but I was kind of the opposite. Like, obviously I'm one of the owners here at the movement, and like entrepreneurship was not something that I ever really thought too much about. Like, and I wasn't the kid that like sold stuff or did lemonade stands. And then when I got into university and went to physio school, and I think like when I really decided like the entrepreneurship journey was for me was more when I like knew there was something that I wanted to create that wasn't necessarily being done the way that I wanted to do it. That kind of like motivated me to be like, okay, I'm going to figure out how to learn about business, learn about sales, learn about marketing, what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So it's cool to see like the different entry points into it. And
For sure.
The other thing is now every time I see a lemonade stand, to your point, I stop.
Oh, so do I.
And I go out and I give them money, and I ask them questions like, "What are you doing? What are you gonna do with the money? Like, what are you gonna do with all your earnings?" Like, and just like kind of encourage them to like explore that more.
Well, I do the same thing, and whoever else is listening, if you see a lemonade stand, stop and support the next generation of entrepreneurs.
Yeah, for sure.
That's important.
Yeah,
and that's where it starts for a lot of people. And I'm one of them, and it's awesome to hear that you do that too.
Yeah,
I like hearing that.
Yeah. So you go into the family business after, right? Like, what were some of the things that you learned throughout your time working for the business, and then obviously eventually the sale of that business? Like, what were some of the big takeaways that you had from that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's learning how to follow before trying to be a leader. I think I had a great experience there where I worked as everybody's assistant over the years. Kind of mailroom on up type of story. And then I sold my first insurance policy, and it was like, oh, okay, sales, this is cool, right? And then I tried to be respectful about that business, and that I wasn't cold calling and hustling everybody for their car insurance. I kind of just was out, and like every single event in the city, the Young Entrepreneurs and Professional Group for the Chamber, every kind of fundraiser that was out there, just attending that and just being a part of the community naturally lends to getting sales, because people will just make the connection with you as the insurance guy if they see you all day every day. And that's what I was doing. I was calling myself the connector, because I was connecting the community to our company, and that was whether it was through a sale of insurance, or it was through the marketing that I would end up kind of taking on as a responsibility, and putting out, at the time it would have been print ads and stuff like that. But that's really the connection that your company's making with the community. And then from there, I would just say it's being authentic. Like my first real big win in the insurance business is, this is someone that I still consider a friend today. He asked me, we were at a charity event together, and he asked me, he goes, "Why haven't you asked, to take care of my insurance yet?" And I said, "Well, I think the most respectful way to go about this business is to be asked." And he starts laughing. He goes, "Okay, I like that. Well, my renewal's in 2 weeks, so get to work."
Yeah.
And I think I was like 21 years old, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, and I ended up telling him that. I told him, I said, "Dave, like, I don't know what I'm doing here, man, but I've got the best team in the city. Like, we'll take care of it for you." And he started laughing. He goes, "You're the first insurance guy to ever tell me the truth and just be honest with me." He goes, "Everyone else says I'm faster, smarter, I'll do it cheaper, whatever. You're just honest. You just told me you don't know anything." So I thought that was a pretty cool way to get my first piece of business. And I kind of just parlayed that throughout that career, and just connecting a team of experts, people that had been doing it for a long time, with a new opportunity. And being that kind of, that one call away, and then I had the resources behind me to kind of make sure things got done properly.
Yeah, there's a lot of value to that.
For sure.
And it's interesting because I'm sure we'll get there. I want to ask you a question before that, but it sounds like, and I didn't really know this until you told me that, it sounds like there's probably a lot of what you do learn there that you do with June, like your role with June, like from what I kind of understand. So
for sure,
it's cool how that develops, right?
Yeah, and it, you know, it was kind of that Malcolm Gladwell, I think it was Tipping Point or Outliers, one of those books where he defined this personality type as the connector.
Yeah.
And I kind of just like, you know, whoa, that's me. That's who I am.
Yeah.
You know, I'm constantly connecting people with each other, and whether that's in benefit to me or not, it's just, I think, the right thing to do in business, right? You just, you know, you give all these opportunities and you give your time and you don't expect anything in return. And if something comes back to you, great, right? And more times than not, it does, right? Like there's been plenty of calls that I get nowadays that, hey, remember, you know, so-and-so that you introduced me to 5 years ago? Well, look, you know, they want to meet with you regarding June. Oh, okay, cool. That would be great. You know, so it's just, again, being out there regularly, consistently, being authentic to, you know, who you are and what you're doing. I think that's what I really took from the insurance business and into my other businesses now. I think, you know, just, you know, and hustling, you know, you got to pound the pavement.
Yeah, for sure.
You know?
I don't want to blow past what you said about following first before you learn how to lead. I think that's such a important, like, skill set or thing to think about if you're anyone, like if you're going into a new business, but like even like I think back to when I was in physio school and like trying to learn new skills and like build myself up to like be able to get to a point where I am now. And I took that similar approach where it's like, okay, I'm gonna go find someone or a group of people that are doing what I want to do or in a way that I want to do it. I'm gonna go and try to like offer as much value as I can to them to learn from them first before I get to the point where like I'm just gonna go start leading other people. And I think like I think in today's world there's the access to like put yourself in front of people in like social media, which I'm a huge fan of, and I love social media, and I think there's a lot of benefits that you can utilize it for. But it's very much like, oh, I'm just gonna go and start like telling or leading without really following or learning first. And I think there's a lot to be said for like taking that path of like learning from someone, going through the process of like learning, failing, and then eventually become someone who's going to bring other people along.
Right. And, you know, I think when you do that, you get to know what great leadership is, right? Because there's a lot of, I'd say, people out there that are in leadership roles that maybe just aren't cut out to be. And it's maybe by no fault of their own. It's just they got promoted up a chain, and now they're in this place that is not true to who they actually are. You know, like they not everybody's meant to do that, and not everyone wants to do that. But sometimes people, again, are put in those roles, and if you can recognize that, you know, okay, yeah, you know what, I will lead, you know, follow you into that trench no matter what, or you know, I don't like the way this is going, you know, pause, right? So I think having that like kind of experience of, again, good leadership, great leadership, and then knowing, you know, what the difference is super important before you can put yourself in that role to do it yourself.
And sometimes seeing, for me, I've always learned a lot from like seeing what I don't want to do, or like seeing bad leadership where it's like, oh, I know I don't want to do that. Like you can gain a lot from that, which comes from just like getting a bunch of experience in many different realms, or putting yourself in a position to be exposed to good or maybe not so good.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree. And, you know, I think, you know, anybody that would be following you would expect that you were in that position once upon a time too, right? You followed someone else. Like, who did you look up to? Who was your mentor? Who was your favorite boss, right? Or that person that, you know, you like to read their books, or, you know, you have to, because that's a form of leadership too, right? I mentioned Malcolm Gladwell before. You know, the fact that, you know, he's a best-selling author, he's a thought leader for sure, right? And that's a form of leadership. Yeah. So, you know, I think just a different kind of perspective on it, but
and even like the best people, like I just got done reading, you might resonate with this, Kobe Bryant's autobiography.
Okay, cool.
And it was great, but there's a time in there where they were giving him a lot of flack for like very much modeling Michael Jordan, even to like points of like modeling some of Michael's mannerisms and how he played early on in his career. And someone like asked Michael Jordan about that and was like, how do you feel about him? Like, and Michael Jordan was like, yeah, he's like, that's what everyone does. It's like, that's what I did with the greatest people in the world. I wanted to be the best basketball player, so I modeled my game after whoever was ahead of him, and I copied and then developed my own version of all this. And Kobe was doing the same thing. So there's something to be said about like that's actually part of like passing it on, and it's almost like a sign of like respect that like, hey, he's trying to be like me because he wants to be the best basketball player in the world, you know. So
and I think both of those guys achieved that. And again, they each followed somebody else, and they learned about that, and then they both became, you know, world class, and they both became those leaders, and they were, you know, I think very similar. If you've ever seen that video where you see Kobe coming down, doing the exact same play on the court that Jordan would have done, you know, years prior, right? It's really cool when you see that back to back, and like the mannerisms, the footwork. It's like you're watching the same player, but a generation apart, right? So it's pretty cool.
Okay, I want to get a little bit into June. So I think like maybe a good place to start would be to maybe lay the foundations for like what the business is, and then we could dive into maybe what regenerative farming is and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. So the company is June Regenerative Farmland Investments, and we're buying farmland that is underperforming, and we are leasing it out to the next generation of farmers that are very passionate about providing food that is produced in the right way for the next generation. So, you know, not all farmland is created equally, not all food is created equally, and unfortunately our system is kind of broken right now. So we've recognized that, and we've recognized that this next generation of farmers need the support. They need more farmland so they can grow their business, and their business is about producing food, not about owning land. And in the US, we lose an acre of farmland every minute. The stats are crazy. So with a supply that's going down, and you know, a demand for high quality food that's going up, you know, I think we're in a really unique place. So I like to say that we're financing the future of food, and we're financing the future of farming by buying this land and putting it behind the right farmers, people that are already doing things differently. You know, they're operating regenerative systems on maybe it's land that they already lease, or it's land that they already own or inherited, but they have the desire and ambition to grow their business, but they can't afford to buy more land right now. So we'll identify, you know, these next generation farmers, and we'll say, okay, look, we like what you're doing. We've been following you. We like your story. Maybe we visited them. We'd like to buy some land and put it behind you so you can grow your business. And we come up with a very competitive lease structure, and that's how we're doing it. So, you know, for us, it's really, you know, a mission to get more quality food produced on an annual basis, because the demand for organic food in the US is quite high, but the supply is very low. And, you know, regenerative food is even, you know, the demand is even higher and the supply is even lower. So we're at a good kind of spot right now for that. And I think if you want to talk about regenerative agriculture a little bit, what that really means.
Yeah, I think it would be good to like define the difference between like that and like what conservative or like conventional. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah. So, you know, conventional agriculture is typically defined what we kind of see out there all day, every day. It's perfect rows of manicured crops, whether it's a vineyard or it's grains or it's different produce. You know, it's monocrop. Monocrop is not natural. So regenerative systems, regenerative agriculture are partnering with nature and farming in a way that nature intended to be farmed. So this is the integration of plants and animals on the same acre of farmland. And there's certain species that work together with certain other species, whether it's plants or animals, and they work together and they thrive. So, you know, an example of this would be, you know, planting cover crops in between row crops, and those cover crops would be used for animals that graze. They'll leave the row crops alone, but they will graze the stuff that you plant in between the rows, and now you've got this natural ecosystem on your farm, versus just endless rows of corn,
right.
Which I'm sure you've driven past a farm.
Yeah, I grew up in a small town that actually had a lot of farming, and I worked on a farm growing up.
Yeah.
And that's how it was.
It was monocrop.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, that's just how it has evolved, and it's nobody's fault. Depending what kind of time frame you want to put on modern industrialized agriculture. If we take the last 70 years, for example, that's where it's really become industrialized, and this kind of current system that we all participate in every day. We all eat every day, hopefully.
Yeah.
And we all hopefully get to go to the grocery store when we're hungry. This is kind of supported by this commoditized, industrialized system, which, again, it's fine. It's what got us here today, but I don't think it's where we need to go moving forward, because I think we have failed to feed the world on this system. And I think the regenerative system of these kind of localized, natural ecosystems will support a community. And if we all focus on feeding our community first, we don't need to worry about feeding the world, because the future is local. And that's part of, I think, what we're trying to finance is that beef doesn't need to be imported from Argentina. But more times than not, it is. And the avocado, avocados are great. But, really for the environment, is it great to be eating avocados up here in Canada? It's really not. There's a lot of transportation costs. Like 80% of the produce that we eat in Ontario comes from the US, which is a crazy stat.
That is pretty crazy.
Mostly from California. And it doesn't need to be that way. And that's part of what we're trying to finance. And it's going to be challenging for the legacy system. And it's going to be as challenging, if not more challenging, for this next generation of farmers, to support their local community. And again, that's why we're doing what we're doing, because it's better for our health, it's better for the environment's health, and this is what we believe in as the next generation of food and farming.
So what do you think's been the bigger challenge? And this could be a long-winded question, but what would be the biggest challenge of having regenerative farming be more prevalent?
Yeah, good question. So I think the legacy system is just being in the way. That's how it's been done. That's how my dad did it. That's how my grandfather did it. That's a lot of the mentality in agriculture and farming today.
Right.
It's
passed down.
It's passed down, right? And unfortunately, I'll go as far as to say that it's been the wrong systems that have been kind of perpetuated and passed down. Because if you have a hailstorm that comes in and destroys your crop, well, now what? Maybe you bought the insurance, and maybe you didn't. If you didn't buy the insurance, then you're in trouble. But if a hailstorm comes in and destroys your crop, but you still have chickens, you still have hogs, you still have cows, you've got a fully integrated system, well, you're going to be okay because you have other products to sell. All of your eggs aren't in one basket, right? So I think that's part of the change in mindset. It's to go from this industrialized commodity system to something that isn't new. This is going back to the basics, really. It's farming in a way that nature intended to be farmed. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we forgot about through this industrialization process. So I think as more people, starting with us as consumers, become aware of the food that we're eating and what's going into it, I think there's going to be demand by the consumer for better quality products. Mm. And I hosted an event a couple weeks ago and I said this, it's more expensive to eat this way, to eat organic or regeneratively sourced local products. It's for sure more expensive. And that's a problem, especially today, for a lot of people, right? Food security. But you either kind of make that sacrifice and you pay for better quality food today, or your health may suffer later. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the ingredients that are going into our food are just poisonous, to be frank. Mm-hmm. So there's a mandate for our farms that there's no chemical use, and we're able to no synthetic chemical use. Let me better phrase that. There's certain types of crops that you can plant that sequester the same amount of nitrogen down into the soil out of the atmosphere that you would get from applying a synthetic fertilizer. So why use the synthetic fertilizer that you have to pay for instead of just going and buying and planting certain crops that absorb that same amount of nitrogen that the other crops need? Mm-hmm. So I think if that answers the question in a roundabout way, you know, I think the legacy system is a big challenge, and just that change in mindset from one generation to the next, and it's the kind of like acceptance of like, maybe we fucked up, you know, like I think we just killed the health of our soil.
Yeah.
And
how do we
rebuild it?
Yeah.
Right. And it's a huge challenge because if you look at what happens, like, you know, as a result of degraded soils, you know, now the topsoil is very hot, right? Like if you've got like a traditional, maybe it's a farm where you're growing corn one year and wheat the next year, and you go and you crop it. Now it's just open top. It's just bare soil. So what happens is that gets hot and it pushes away the weather because heat rises. So unfortunately, you're not going to get the weather that you need, the water, the precipitation to then, you know, put nutrients back in the ground because they've been kind of, you know, washed away by previous weather. Because the soil is so compacted, it goes off, it just gets washed away. So it's a very unfortunate cycle that kind of monocrop agriculture perpetuates, and that's just one example, you know, of topsoil, you know, depletion, you know, the weather being moved away from heat rising. So you can go on and on and on about this, but I think it's our generation that's going to kind of fix this problem, and it's by adopting these kind of long lost strategies and farming techniques that, again, have just been, they were industrialized to death, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. And so from your perspective, is it like June is looking like connecting with people who are currently doing this type of farming? That's right. And then you are, you know, basically connecting them with the land to be able to like to do that in a way that like makes it more like affordable for them as a business to scale.
That's right.
Because they can lease they're leasing the land from you guys, which would be a less of an upfront investment than, let's say, like going and trying to purchase more land to expand that type of farming.
Exactly. So like if you look at farmland around here, for example, it's getting incredibly expensive. So to come up with millions of dollars to buy a ranch or a farm, you know, that's just not accessible for many people. So can you afford to pay a lease? Yeah, most people can. You know, as long as you're currently performing at what you're doing, you've got cash flow, okay, yeah, I can pay that lease, no problem. And the way that we structure our leases are kind of innovative, and in the payment schedule, it makes it really attractive, you know, to the people that we're out there looking to support.
Yeah.
So, you know, you might not be able to buy the $1 million farm, but can you afford $20,000 a year?
Right.
You probably can, right? If you can generate significant amount of business on that land, which we're happy that, you know, our current partners, they're growing, and we're happy to be a part of that growth.
Is that a big? Is that one of the barriers in that space? Is the ability for these types of farmers to scale their?
For sure.
Yeah. For
sure. So like the average age of a farmer in Canada and the U.S. is, you know, in the U.S. it's 57, and in Canada it's a little bit older. So, you know, this is an industry that, you know, it needs a transition, and a lot of times the next generation, our generation, they may or may not be interested in farming. You know, they may have already moved on to the city and they're working in an office.
Yes.
And there's this challenge of, you know, what's the family going to do with the farm? So, you know, because maybe there is one kid that wants to be a farmer, maybe there's not. Either situation, it's a challenge for the farmland owner. And, you know, that one kid that maybe is the farmer, well, look, we'll buy out majority of the farm. You keep your portion of it that you know might inherit from a family, because farms are typically multi-generational. Like you see a lot of that, right? But you know, the challenge becomes as that land gets more valuable, and there's only maybe one kid of a few that wants to be a farmer. How do you fairly distribute that value amongst the next generation? Right. It's a challenge.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about that. I bet you that's that must be a big problem that a lot of
Every
farmers,
day.
because like I said, I grew up in a small town that was like there's a lot of farming that was going on there, and I think about some of my friends who were parents were farmers, who they're like, I know that they're not farmers anymore, the kids. So it's like their parents are still farming or getting to that similar point. It's like, well, what do you do? Normally it was just easy, like we'll pass it off to the kids, but like times are changing, obviously.
Changing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I never really thought about that.
So that's part of our business to help facilitate that like perpetuation and that wealth transition from one generation to the next. Hopefully, in doing so, it supports that next generation that wants to continue to farm.
Right.
So those kids that have maybe moved on to work in a city in an office or do whatever they're doing, that's fine. You still will benefit from that kind of transition as that next generation, while your sibling gets to still manage the family farm.
Right.
So we'll lease it back to that kid that wants to continue to farm. So, and they still get to be the steward of land that has probably been in their family for a long time. Mm-hmm. So, that's something that I think a lot of people are proud of. Like this farm's been in my family for 100 years.
Yeah.
And even if we step in and partner with them, you're still the steward of that land. We're not farmers. Like I've never worked on a farm.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It's interesting to own farmland as a non-farmer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely a change in.
It's a change for sure. But we want that person to continue to be the steward of that land because it's been in their family for so long.
Well, it's funny you bring this up because I had a client the other day actually who had gotten a new tattoo, and it was the date that their grandma's farm was founded, I guess. And I was asking him about it because I was like, oh, that's cool. And they actually just sold the farm. And then they didn't pass it on to the kids. They sold it because the kids weren't really in farming.
They're not into it.
And they sold the property that will most likely be like used for some other type of investment, not for farming.
Right.
And so it kind of, to your point of what you guys are doing, like that would, in my mind, be an opportunity for.
Yeah, and there's a lot of land use challenges with like just agriculture in general. Mm-hmm. Like, whether it's this farmland's being lost for residential development or development of any kind. That's a very kind of sensitive subject, right?
Yeah.
Maybe farmland is being transitioned from one crop to the next, or like some of the stats are crazy. Like 70% of farmland in the U.S. is for corn and grains and soy for livestock. Well, that's a huge amount of farmland,
right? Just
to support livestock.
Yeah.
So that's its own
thing.
Probably podcast. Like we could probably talk for a long time about that, but it does come down to a land use problem, and how much food we're producing from that land is kind of the next part of the problem, because we've got a growing population in Canada and North America and the planet that we need to support. Well, if our current system's not doing that, then we need to change how we're doing things.
Right.
So again, I think most people have a doctor on their phone. Most people have a dentist, a lawyer, their banker, an accountant. How many people have a farmer's phone number that they can call?
Yeah.
Right? I think that's a really interesting thing for the next 10 years, especially as the world continues to change. Get to know a farmer, and just someone that you can trust that is going to produce you good quality food. Like we just went through a pandemic and there was empty shelves at the grocery store.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be in that situation. So if you develop a relationship with someone that's producing your food, it doesn't matter if the grocery stores are empty or not. Mm-hmm. You're still going to have a consistent supply, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And because I'm willing to bet that farmer is going to continue on with the relationships that were supporting him, rather than the grocery stores that probably tried to jam him on pricing and things like that.
It's true. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would love to hear a little bit about like let's say I'm working with you guys and I invest in like you got like the property you lease a property to me. Like what is some of those benefits from like the farmer's standpoint to work with you
For
guys?
sure. So like I can give you an example. Like the one piece we have, it's in Oklahoma. Our ranching partners down there are just incredible people, and this gives them more capacity. So they are cattle ranchers, and our land provides them with an additional land to move more cattle on and off, which benefits them in their business because they're pretty sophisticated in how they do things, but they have custom grazing, they have their own herd for their own products. So custom grazing is when you're managing cattle for somebody else. So you're taking kind of possession of those cows, and even though you don't own them, they're in your care and custody, and you are raising those animals. So they need more land to do that. So they get paid on a certain schedule to add weight to those animals, and they already have their own capacity issues. So okay, we need more land. So let's lease some more land, and we can, if we need it for ourselves, we can put our animals onto that land, or if our clients whose animals that we're taking care of, we can put those animals on that land as well. So it comes down to just a more capacity thing for our partners. And for the investor, it's one of those things that I think everybody should have a piece of farmland in their portfolio. You might have stocks and bonds and other real estate, and you look at a kind of portfolio of investments. Everybody should have a piece of farmland in that portfolio in some way, shape, or form. There's many other funds out there that do what we're doing, but we're the only one that's doing it how we're doing it and supporting regenerative agriculture. The other companies, they are farmland funds, period. Our fund has a focus on the regenerative kind of segment of agriculture and that support of the next generation. And we're able to offer pretty attractive returns to our investors. So it's a uncorrelated asset class. It's got a lot of qualities to it. And beyond all of that, it's about restoring, kind of the environment, because regenerative agriculture does that. It adds value to the environment rather than subtracts from it.
Yeah.
The use of synthetic fertilizers just kills the health of the soil. Well, we don't do that on our properties. So if you look at over time what improving the health of the land does to your investment, it hasn't quite been priced by the market, and that's a bit of our IP. That's our secret sauce, where it's like, okay, if our land is healthier and our land is providing more grass for these cows to graze, on an income basis, our land should be more valuable than the land next door because it's not being priced on an income basis. So, because it's not producing enough grass.
Right.
So we've got a really interesting thesis.
Yeah.
And our ranching partners are happy. We're happy as operators. Our investors are happy, and it's something that I'm very proud to have started with my partners. I've got a great team of guys and gals. And we're just passionate about doing this every single day.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question before we kind of go into some fun rapid fire questions and then kind of wrap up, is why is this so meaningful to you, and what keeps you motivated around doing what you're doing for June?
Yeah, it's a cool question. I'm a foodie, true and true. I'm very fortunate that I'm able to go and buy ingredients and different things that I want for my wife and I to have dinner together every single night. It's for me stress relief, to be able to go to the grocery store and source different ingredients and come home and make dinner for my wife and I. It's just something I'm passionate about, and that's kind of gotten into, well, look, this food might not be the best for us, so how can we find better quality food? And that's kind of led us down this path of everything we're consuming, whether it's shampoos and toothpastes and the wine that we're drinking, the food we're eating, to be as natural as possible. And it's really for our own health, first and foremost. I think we want to be in a very healthy place when we go to start our family and have kids. And we want those kids to just know from a very young age that this is what it means to, eat healthily and be healthy. And whether, whether that actually happens or not, I think it's something that I've gotten really connected to for the, kind of that mission-driven, this is what's good for the planet too. So if we're able to change the way that we farm, that's going to have a tremendous benefit on the planet. So as much as it's about me, it's also about everybody else too, because we're all in this together at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And we choose to support either the industrialized commodity system that has got us here and has, contributed to the pollution and the harmful effects on the environment. When we go to the grocery store, that dollar that we spend is going to support that, or it's going to the farmer's market and maybe a little bit more planning in your week. You got to go to the farmer's market, and you got to find a community of producers that you're going to support, and know that the chickens are pasture raised, and they're not being force fed garbage. And same things with any other animal proteins if that's what you're into. But there's all kinds of issues that we can talk about there. But I think, again, as much as it's about my wife and I and my family and future family, it's about all of us too, because this is one easy thing. If we all just kind of change our mindset, we can have a tremendous positive impact on the environment and the planet and the climate. If you look at the climate change, whether that's something you subscribe to or not, there are some statistics that would say it's getting hotter, right? Like, we can feel that. And again, if we maybe change the way that we farm, I think we have an opportunity to cool down the planet. And if you look at our logo and how it's designed, the start of the J is red hot. And as you kind of move through the cursive spelling of June, it goes to a very green and kind of cool place.
Yeah.
And the idea was that we can facilitate that kind of cooling transition of this industrialized system to something that's more natural, that helps cool the planet down. It produces better quality food, and part of doing that and how it's done is just by letting things rewild. Like partnering with nature, because it's the original technology. We kind of came around at some point and said, no, I think we can do it better as humans, right? It's like we thought we were better than a 4 billion year old planet.
Yeah. Well,
no, you know what? Like, this planet's been here for a long time, and it's gone through lots of different cycles, and it knows best. It's the original technology, and we've coined a term, and we've trademarked it, called natural intelligence. So our natural intelligence process is really how we do this. It connects the next generation of farmers with responsible investors today that are passionate about not only providing better quality food for everybody to eat, but also making the planet a better place.
Love it. So. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I think it's cool, and it's probably a change that's going to take a lot of work, a long time. When you talk about the next generation, and generation is a long period of time.
For sure.
But I think one thing I've always talked about is you have a lot more impact as an individual than you think, and it starts by each individual trying to take control of that. So it's like with you being like, hey, I value this, I'm going to start buying more locally sourced and regenerative sourced food. It's like that starts it, and then you tell a friend, you tell me, I start doing it. Like, you start the company that facilitates that.
Move like, local.
Yeah.
That's
it
what
slowly starts, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's cool to see that you guys are doing that, and I would imagine it's going to be a long game, but like anything that's worth doing, it's usually a long game. So
it is for sure. And this is one of those investments that someone can make that it's great for the investment return, but it's also great in every other sense of the investment. It's great for the future of food and better quality food and more of it, because the demand for high quality food is there, but the supply is not. So that we're going to be able to achieve that. We're going to be able to have a positive impact on the environment and the climate and our planet just by making these small changes. And I don't know if you've read Atomic Habits, but it's that 1% per day, right? That incremental growth. And that's really what, this investment would represent. It's over time, a great investment, but it's also an investment in the future of farming and our planet, because it's going to make the planet a healthier place. It's going to make us a healthier, species.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, a couple rapid fire questions for you.
So
I know you're a foodie, local to Hamilton. So what would be one of your recent or maybe your favorite local restaurant in the area?
Oh man, that's tough.
It's a rigged question, which is why I like to throw in maybe more recently that you've tried.
So I'm gonna say Tony G's Pizza.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've been there yet.
I haven't been to Tony G's yet. No.
It's unreal.
I know. One of my clients actually last week was telling me about. I've heard of it, but she was telling me about it.
It's the spot, and I spend a lot of time in Niagara. I'm very fortunate to have grown up with some winemakers, and Ferox is also another one. It's a small winery in Niagara on the Lake.
Yeah.
the culinary team there, just incredible. Like, it's one of those things my wife and I joke about. Like, if we could only go to that place, we would.
Yeah, that's how good
right?
it is. Yeah.
And because they are very focused on producing food that is incredibly delicious, but it's also like locally sourced. Every ingredient either comes from their farm or from a neighbor's farm, and that's cool. Pretty cool.
That's cool.
And then it goes with the wine that is made without chemicals. So, when you're not spraying chemicals on your vines, you're not making any chemical additions in the winemaking process, you get a product that is truly fermented grape juice versus, these wines from, I'll say California, I'll pick on California. It tastes like chocolate and all this weird, stuff that's not natural to wine. And that's, again, it's not wine at that point. So to pair the great wine at Fair Oaks with like the food that they're making, I'm going to say Tony G's and Fair Oaks.
Okay, cool. Yeah. What would be one of your favorite local coffee shops?
Well, I was just at Detour for a meeting.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
Yeah, Detour's great.
Yeah, I love that. But I'd say my daily kind of coffee stop is Duran Coffee.
Yeah.
That's in my neighborhood.
Yeah, Duran is very good.
I've lived in that neighborhood for a long time, and it's a community spot. It's a local.
It is a community spot.
It's a cool spot.
Yeah.
So
their coffee's very good too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is good, and like I like to stock the house with coffee from that shop. So
cool.
Yeah.
What would be one of your favorite ways to stay active?
Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I walk the dogs. That's my thing. I like to just go out with my dogs. I've got a purebred hunting dog, bird dog, German short hair pointer named Hootie.
Hootie. That's awesome.
Hootie's the man.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I just got a West Highland Terrier, actually Kobe.
Okay.
So we named him after the great.
Yeah. And
this little dog is awesome. So taking them on walks first thing in the morning, at night with my wife, that makes my day.
Nice.
Part of the reason why I'm here in the clinic with you is so I can get in better shape and do more things.
Yeah.
So like play tennis and maybe even shoot some hoops and get up and down the court one more time.
I love it. Yeah. Last question I like to ask everyone is like, what does like move local mean to you when you hear those words?
Yeah, when I saw that question, I was just like, that's cool, and that's kind of like the thesis of my business too.
Yeah.
I've lived in Toronto on and off over the years, and I always get drawn back to Hamilton. And there is a movement happening, I think, in Hamilton, and it's been happening. It's this renaissance, I think, for the last 10, 15 years. There's been something special brewing here. And I think like we're in a really great spot as a city. There's lots of challenges, but that's anywhere. But I think what you're doing with this podcast is making people move, and I think hopefully localizing it too, right? Mm-hmm. I do believe, I say it all the time, the future is local. So if you can stay local with your dollar and doing that in the grocery store or the farmer's market, I think. That's a great place to be, and hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Why don't you leave where people can find more about June on Instagram or website or wherever they can go to learn more about it? For sure. So our website's juneregen.com. It's a great resource to kind of learn a little bit more about regenerative agriculture. We're on Instagram for sure. We've got an email, a newsletter, and just a way for people to stay updated with what we're doing, our current offerings, because we're always looking at new additions in the portfolio. So yeah, between newsletter, Instagram, and our website, that's probably it. Even myself, I'm on the phone all day, every day, so yeah, I can be reached on my phone, and I think that's probably it. I would also suggest a documentary on Netflix called Kiss the Ground. Kiss the Ground is narrated by Woody Harrelson, and it's a great 90 minutes around how we can really make this change. Cool. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I was telling you before, like the website is awesome, and I think like what you guys do a really good job of like I don't know much about this topic, and like going on your website and reading through the info that you have on there about the topic was really great. And I think that's a big key to this process is like educating consumers, us, everyone around what this looks like. So if you guys are looking for a little bit more information, I recommend checking out the website and the Instagram page and everything else that Jordan and his team's doing.
Yeah, thanks, man. This
No
is
problem.
awesome.
Yeah.
Love it.
Sweet.
Cool.